Hey friend, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm going to be briefly showing you a comparison between Eterna and F-Log, but with a twist. Someone commented recently on one of my videos and asked me to check out the differences between Eterna with the dynamic range set to 400 and F-Log. So the dynamic range you can change inside of the Fuji cameras. You can just set it to 100, 200, and 400, and it changes your base minimum ISO. I'm not exactly sure, technically speaking, if it applies a logarithmic curve or if it just redistributes the linear curve. Yeah, there's a lot of technicalities there. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just trust me, I don't know what I'm talking about either. It's really complex, but basically log footage is distributing light on your sensor or interpreting that light in a different way than linear footage, which is standard profile footage. So yeah, I'm not sure what exactly that dynamic range setting is doing technically speaking, but they wanted me to compare Eterna with DR400 versus F-Log. So theoretically, you should see F-Log comparative to most standard footage like Eterna, has better dynamic range. The F-Log should, because it's a logarithmic curve, and so it does a better job of interpreting information to favor a wider dynamic range. But standard footage, should have less dynamic range because the way that it interprets light and your footage. So this would be really interesting because log footage is a little bit harder to work with. It's much better for professional work because you have so much more control, but it's a little more difficult to work with for normal people or for people who are trying to do quicker workflows because it doesn't give you as finished of an image straight out of camera. So having Eterna shoot with the same dynamic range as F-Log potentially would be really interesting because Eterna is much easier to work with than F-Log is. So yeah, I was really interested in this. And another major factor that made me interested was that F-Log is just difficult to expose correctly on the first try if you're in dynamic lighting situations. If you're in simple lighting situations, you can definitely get it right the first try, especially if you practice. But with these cameras, the little screen just isn't enough to work with F-Log, and they don't have F-Log assist yet. The X-T4 will have that, but I don't always have a camera monitor, and I can't always expose it just right on here. So Eterna makes that much easier. So I can see with colors what is this image going to look like, or closely what is it going to look like when I get into the editing room. And to expose correctly and to have as much dynamic range as F-Log would be an awesome little tool. So that's what this test is. Dynamic range of 400 on Eterna versus F-Log. Let's just go ahead and look at the footage. So right here, what we have in DaVinci is F-Log and Eterna footage lined up down the row, and F-Log, I just applied the Eterna conversion LUT from Fuji directly off their website, and I'm just going to do a quick scrub through this footage so that you can see a comparison right now of F-Log with the Eterna LUT applied against Eterna. Okay, I'm going to go into my color tab here and I'm just going to show you what happened. All I did was apply the LUT, and if I needed to, I applied a little bit of correction, but I tried to keep my exposure consistent by setting the zebras the exact same and then using the zebras to match the exposure perfectly while shooting. So here's a shot, for example, where everything was the exact same. All I did was apply the LUT. and here I changed it just a little bit. And now I'm going to click on the waveforms and let you see just how similar they are. These waveforms are almost identical. And in fact, I'm going to get into something here in just a second on another piece of footage, but I would say that for the most part, in my experience, what I saw was that you actually ended up retaining just a little bit more information possibly with Eterna. And I can't explain why that is. It may be user error. Maybe I didn't perfectly get the footage just right when exposing F-Log, but I think I exposed it in enough scenarios, and I think I exposed it well enough to say that I got a little bit better results with Eterna with the dynamic range set to 400. And here's one where you can see the information in the greens here is just a little bit more full in the Eterna than it is in the F-Log. Even here, there's another example. So that's Eterna and that's F-Log. And once again, that grass right outside the window here, you can just see a very, very small difference, but there is a difference, and I just think that's so awesome that the Eterna footage is giving you such great dynamic range without having to do a log workflow and expose and risk log exposure. So I'll turn off the color grade now and just let you see this footage compared. So that's the comparison. All right, in short, I love the results that I found. Eterna set to the dynamic range of 400 does not appear to have any drawbacks, and in fact, there would be one thing I noticed that when I exposed, I didn't include this in the test for you to see, but when I exposed F-Log at anything close to 0 on the exposure meter, if I exposed it perfectly center, then I would get a little bit of noise, and you've seen that. That's pretty common with log footage on lower end cameras or DSLRs, mirrorless cameras, and especially when you're exposing center or left of center at all, like underexposed. And with the Eterna, with the dynamic range set to 400, I don't know exactly what's going on there, but the image was much cleaner if I exposed on the center or even a little bit left. There was less noise in my experience. So yeah, all in all, what I learned was that if you want to shoot F-Log, you're going to be really happy. F-Log is great if you really like having that degree of control and you want to be creative and you have LUTs that work specifically for F-Log. You're going to want to keep shooting F-Log. But if you're looking to get the most dynamic range out of the Fuji cameras, especially the Fuji XT3 with 10-bit internal, then I would tell you it is seriously worth considering using Eterna at the dynamic range of 400 as opposed to F-Log, because you'll end up being able to expose it more accurately in camera, I think, without a monitor and without F-Log view assist that will come on the X-T4, and it will shorten your workflow just a little bit in post-production. So yeah, this is not a technical review. I'm sure there's a lot of information that I may be missing here, but for as far as I can tell, I'm super impressed with Eterna at the dynamic range of 400. For the time being, I'm going to stick to my classic Chrome profile that I dialed back, and I've really honed that in, and I've got my color grade to a point where I'm really happy with it. The dynamic range looks good. So I'm going to stick to my classic Chrome profile for the time being, but I have been playing around with F-Log a lot recently, and it is nice to have a little bit more latitude when you need it, and it definitely does influence an image and changes the cinematic appeal. So yeah, I'm starting to see that a little bit more useful in some of my projects, and I would love to incorporate it where it's practical. So that's all I have for this video. I hope you found it helpful. I'm going to be back in this exact same shirt and hat because I'm just going to stop this video and I'm going to start with a color grading video on how I work with this footage right here. So I'll see you in just a moment. Peace.